الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا ويقول الله عز وجل في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وذكر فإن ذكرى تنفع المؤمنين. All praise is due to Allah. We seek His aid, we seek His forgiveness, and we seek refuge in Allah from the evil of our own souls. And I bear witness that there is no God except Allah and that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is His slave and His messenger. Whomever Allah guides cannot be misguided, and whomever He is allowed to go astray can never be guided aright. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in approximate meaning in the Quran, and remind, for indeed the reminder benefits the believers. I would like to ask you to think about for a moment what the khutbah last week was about. How much of it do you remember? What specifics were discussed in the khutbah last week that you could tell me about now? And if the answer is nothing or not much, my question to you then is, why are you here? Is the only reason for you being here in Jum'ah because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it a fard, an obligation for you? And if that's the case, in what manner do you bring this obligation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? We remember, I'm sure, the story of the children of Adam alayhi salam, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked them each to bring a sacrifice of their crops and their herd. And the one brought the best of his crops and the best of his animal. And the other one fulfilled the letter of the law. He brought some crops, but they were the ones that were withered and diseased. And he brought an animal that was weak and sickly. And as we know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not accept that which is not good. That just because the one fulfilled the letter of the law did not mean that it was accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What kind of a fard do we bring to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Do we come to Jum'ah and sit and zone out and take a nap? Not even paying attention or allowing what's said simply to pass by our minds? Do we come filled with resentment because we were forced to come as children and we were beaten if we weren't? And so we've developed a habit of coming, but it's just coming because I have to come. Or maybe it's not that bad, but we just come because it's a habit, and I know the brothers will give me a hard time if they don't see me at Jum'ah, so I'll show up so that nobody gives me grief about it. Or maybe we excuse ourselves because we say the khatib was boring. He doesn't know how to speak well. He wasn't engaging. I didn't understand his accent. He gave most of the khutbah in English and I only speak Arabic. He gave most of the khutbah in Arabic and I only speak English. Because the reality is, my dear brothers and sisters, that our deen contains nothing except that it's beneficial for us. There is absolutely nothing that we've been asked to do or even recommended to do in this deen that doesn't have some benefit and value and use to us. The Prophet ﷺ never spoke or gave us a task to do because he felt stuck and had the need to give us some busy work. Or he was put on the spot and thought, oh, I have to say something, and just said something random. So we have to know that the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it an obligation for us to come to Jum'ah has great benefit for us. The fact that the Prophet ﷺ encouraged us to read Surah Al-Kahf every Friday means that there is a great value and benefit for us if we do so. The fact that we're told to get up for Fajr before the sun comes up, even when we're most tired at that point, means that there's a good reason and a benefit for us. The fact that we're told to give sadaqah above and beyond the zakat means there's a good in it for us. The fact that we're told not to gossip, that we're told to control our tongue, that we're told to speak good or keep silent, that we're told not to lie, not to gossip, all of these instructions have great virtue and benefit in it for each and every one of us. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, لا إكراه في الدين قد تبين الرشد من الغي فمن يكفر بالطاغوت ويؤمن بالله فقد استمسك بالعروة الوثقى لا انفصام لها والله سميع عليم. Let there be no compulsion in religion, for truth stands out clearly from falsehood. And whoever renounces false gods and believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has certainly grasped the firmest of handholds. And Allah is all hearing and all knowing. But you see, my dear brothers and sisters, there's action that's tied to this. Renouncing the false gods, believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, grasping the handhold. These are actions that we have to take. Because our deen is not something that you can just say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, I'm done. I have my salvation, Jannah is mine. We can't call upon our father or great-grandfather or great-great-great-grandfather and say, but he was a great sheikh. He had the Quran memorized. I'm good. I come from a long line of pious scholars. I'm fine. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَذَكِّرْ فَإِنَّ الذِّكْرَ تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. So remind each other, because the reminder benefits the believer. The difference between the people in Mecca who entered hellfire versus those who entered paradise were those who took the reminder seriously. When the Prophet ﷺ came with two purposes, right? Bashiran wa nadira. The Prophet ﷺ came to give the good news and to give the warning. It was a reminder to the people, your actions matter. What you do makes a difference. How you behave has accountability to it. And if you conduct yourself in a way pleasing to Allah, striving to do what Allah and His Messenger are asking you to do, good news. Jannah is yours. It doesn't matter the results. It doesn't matter if you're not very good at it. What matters is that you try and you keep coming back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over and over, and that you try your best to make your intention to do what is pleasing to Allah and His Messenger. And then regardless of your success at it, the fact that you keep trying and keep making that effort, that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. Good news, Jannah. And if you don't, if you choose to just put it to the side, if you choose to be like that son of Adam who said, I'm going to fulfill the letter of the law, but basically I'm ignoring it, bad news, warning. There's a punishment. Because we're accountable for what we know. And we're accountable for our deeds and our actions. And so when the disbelievers were given the reminders, they were mocking of the Prophet ﷺ. They were insulting. And they took no action. The believer takes action. And the reason I started with this question of what did you learn last Jum'ah is because too often, too many of us, within moments of walking out the door, have no recollection of what we just heard. The khutbah is supposed to be a reminder for all of us. And we know that the reminder benefits the believer, and if we're walking out of the door without having any benefit, then we have to question our state of belief. Because what Allah says is true, and He tells us that the reminder benefits the believer. So when we come week after week, and the Jum'ah has no impact on us, what actions or improvements in our life did we make based on what we heard last week in the Jum'ah? And before we're quick to make excuses for ourselves as to why we should be exempted from that, because of the reasons of translations or meanings or whatever the case is, there was a scholar, a well-known scholar of his time, who was traveling with some of his students, and they stopped in a small town on Friday. And one of the students said to this scholar, "Let me go tell the local imam that you're in town and that you'll give the khutbah. Because you're a great scholar, you have a lot of knowledge, and you'll see, inshallah, so much benefit's going to come." And the scholar said, "No, we're just going to go and attend and listen to the local khatib." And the student's like, "Come on, what's he going to say? You're a great scholar, for sure you know more than he does," and so forth. And the scholar says, "No, just sit, we're going to go and attend the khutbah." So they go and they attend the khutbah, and then after the khutbah they come out, and the student says, "See, I got nothing out of that khutbah. I told you should have given the khutbah. That was such a boring khutbah. Zero. I got nothing from that khutbah." And the scholar turned to him and said, "Really? I learned a lot in that khutbah." And the student was taken aback. He was amazed. What did you possibly learn from that khutbah that you didn't already know? He said, "Didn't you hear during the khutbah where the imam quoted from the Quran and said that the believers are a people of taqwa?" And he said, "Yes." So he said, I started to reflect on my level of taqwa and my level of remembering of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I started to remember the times when I haven't been very conscious of Allah and when I've had lapses in my focus on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as I started to think about that, I started to make some commitments to myself to make some improvements and to catch myself in areas where I've been lapsed. Because you see, the scholar wasn't making excuses. He wasn't going because he was going to learn some new dalil or some new rules of fiqh. But indeed, الذكرى تنفع المؤمنين. Indeed, the reminders benefit the believer. Part of every khutbah is supposed to be at least a mention of the Quran. So who among us, no matter how bad the khatib is, can say that we have nothing to learn from an ayah of Quran, even if you've heard that ayah 1,000 times? Because there should be some reflection in what we hear that benefits our life. And indeed, as the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever is slowed down by his actions will not be hastened forward by his lineage. نقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness. إن الله غفور رحيم. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah. My dear brothers and sisters, our hearts need to be reconnected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We need to create an urgency within ourselves to come back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because our hearts are sick and we've become numb to the reality. This world has numbed us as to the realities. And by reality I mean the true and ultimate reality, not the illusion that we live within. It's like our ability to taste sweetness. If you eat a lot of processed desserts and cakes and candies, drink a lot of soda pop, your level of tolerance of sugar is very high because those things have so much sugar in them. And they constantly make those things sweeter and sweeter because they know that it's an attractive, it's an addictive quality, so people want to continue to eat more and more sweets. But if you were to cut yourself off from all of these processed sugars and sweets for 2 to 3 months, and then come back and drink a soda or have a candy bar, for the vast majority of us, our reaction would be, ooh, this is too sweet. Because you've gotten used to not having all of that sugar, and then when you eat it or drink it, you can feel how excessively sugary those things are. And the same thing has happened to us when it comes to our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That we've become so distant from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our hearts filled with so much of dunya and the world around us, that we've lost that sweetness of Iman. We've lost the ability to appreciate it. In the same way, perhaps, we've lost the ability to appreciate a piece of fruit because it's just not sweet enough. Which is why, by the way, they genetically modify fruits to make them more sweet. Because we've lost that sensitivity to it. And we've lost our sensitivity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Which is why we can find ourselves engaging in so many things that we shouldn't engage in. Things of haram. Whether it's things that we're watching with our eyes on the computer screens that we shouldn't. Or the ease that we have in gossiping and backbiting and lying. Or cheating each other and calling it just good business practice. Or all of these other things that we do that we know very well we shouldn't do, and yet we don't feel anything in our hearts. It doesn't bother us, it doesn't keep us up at night. That we can hear and see and know about all of the oppression of the Muslims happening all over the world, and yet we don't lose any sleep, and we go on about our business. And we claim information overload. And what can we do about it anyway? And we just give up. I'm one person. Those are governmental issues. Those are issues that big corporations can't solve. Governments can't solve them. What am I going to do about it? And so we excuse ourselves over and over. That we live in a society that promotes every sort of haram and makes it so accessible, and they're always looking for ways to increase their excess. But our hearts have become heedless. We've entered a state of ghafla, a heedlessness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us and tells us, جزاؤهم عند ربهم جنات عدن تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها أبدا رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه ذلك لمن خشي ربه. That we need to enter this state where we seek the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he says, in approximate translation, the reward awaits them with God, gardens of perpetual bliss, through which running waters flow, therein to abide beyond the count of time. Well pleased is Allah with them, and well pleased are they with Him, and all that awaits him who of his sustainer stands in awe. That we don't want to lose this sweetness, this beauty, this reward of Jannah, and ultimately, and more important than any of that, the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because we have become heedless. And in order for us to restore that connection in our heart with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because we know these things. I'm sure that I'm not saying things here that are surprising to you in the sense that you've never heard this ayah. You've never heard that the reminder benefits the believer. You've never heard or been aware of the fact that people are engaging in more sin and less good. That all of us, if we're going to be honest, can see that we have a crisis in our ummah, where we're sliding farther away from the deen. We make more excuses to be less Muslim all the time. that we lose so many of our youth. We see the numbers, so many young ones, when they can be forced to be brought to the masjid. And then as they hit those mid to upper teen years, early 20s, we lose them from our masajid. These are the realities that we're in if we're willing to open our eyes and look, and we see it around us. But it's because our hearts have become disconnected from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so we have to act on that awareness. We have an amanah. We can't just sit by and watch it happen and make excuses and say, well, I'm going to take care of myself. Well, at least my family is good, alhamdulillah. We have awareness and we have to take action, because Allah will hold us to account for that. And we need to start by reconnecting our hearts to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so I want to give everybody a homework assignment to finish before next Jummah. I want everybody to spend at least 30 minutes, more if you can, but I know some of our schedules are very constrained, 30 minutes outside, someplace where you can't see anything man-made. A park, if there's a forest nearby, a lake, something just to be in nature, to reconnect your heart with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Allah tells us to go and look at His creation. And we spend too much time locked in buildings, sitting in our cars, driving the roads, in our homes, everything surrounded by man-made things. Maybe we see a tree out the window, or we look at our lawn as we drive past it into our garage. But I want us to spend some time outside in nature. 30 minutes between now and next Jummah. More if you can, and do it during the daylight so you can appreciate. And when you're there, I want you to focus on what you see around you. And I want you to draw closer to Allah by reflecting on His creation. Don't just walk down the path looking at your watch, waiting for your 30 minutes to be up. As you walk, look at the sea. What insects do you see? And when you see an ant, I want you to reflect on the story of Sulaiman and the ant. And be amazed and in awe at the fact that that ant does more remembrance of Allah than you do. That ant fulfills its purpose every day and does not disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That ant has a task and a role in its community and it fulfills it all the time. Be in awe at the tree and how its leaves are brought out in the spring and fall off in the winter. Except for, mashallah, those evergreen trees, which don't lose their needles. And be amazed at all of the uses Allah has given us for that tree. From shelter to fuel, to beauty, to cleaning our air. Reconnect your heart with its Creator. And spend time in good company. I cannot stress enough how critical it is that we keep ourselves in good company with the people who remind us of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who push us to do good, who continue to say something to us if we step out of line, who keep us on that straight and narrow. And in conclusion, the Messenger of Allah said, purity is half of faith. Saying Alhamdulillah fills the scales, and Subhanallah and Alhamdulillah fill that which is between the heavens and the earth. Prayer is light, charity is a proof, patience is illumination, and the Quran is an argument for you or against you. Everyone starts his day and is a vendor of his soul, either freeing it or bringing about its ruin. My brothers and sisters, we need to create that urgency, that we wake up in the morning and are conscious of the fact that today my soul is for sale. And if I don't make sure that it gets sold to Allah and His Messenger, by engaging it in what Allah and His Messenger have asked and making that intentionality, Shaitan is a ready buyer. And he's out there every day to buy your soul and to ruin it. And each day we start out that way, but if we don't have a sense of urgency about wanting to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, without wanting to improve our lives, and without making a plan to do so, then surely we will only bring ruin to ourselves. So I ask, make your intention now to improve yourself and your life. Make your intention that for this Ramadan, that it will be transformative for you to use all of the benefits and virtues that are inherent in Ramadan to catapult yourself to success with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And not just for the month of Ramadan, but to make that a period of regrowth, of rejuvenation. But don't wait until Ramadan, because we may not see Ramadan. May Allah grant us all Ramadan. But we may not see Ramadan, so don't wait till Ramadan. Make your intention now. And get out in nature this week. And spend some time to reopen your heart. And tell somebody today who's here what you intend to do to draw closer to Allah. Tell somebody here today when you intend to go out and spend that time in nature before next week, so that they can hold you accountable. Because we're good at excusing ourselves and justifying ourselves, but tell somebody today, so that next week or later in the week they can call you, or when they see you they say, hey, have you gone yet? You said you were going to go on Wednesday. Did you go? Bring yourself to be accountable. And inshallah tonight at 7 o'clock during the lecture, we're going to be talking about some very practical ways to be transformative in our life, so that this Ramadan will truly be the best Ramadan that we've had. Because I'm sure we've heard a lot of good talks and lectures and reminders about the specific virtues of Ramadan, but what we need to talk about now is how are we going to truly implement those things so that this Ramadan becomes transformative for us for the rest of our lives, and by default then our families. اللهم اتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم اغفر لي ولوالدينا والذين سبقونا بالإيمان ولا تجعل في قلوبنا غلا للذين آمنوا ربنا إنك رؤوف رحيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلم تسليما. اذكروا الله يذكركم وادعوه يستجب لكم ولذكر الله أكبر وأقيموا الصلاة.